Moments of inspiration mixed with time to network, IBJ Media Events has you covered. From industry deep dives to awards celebrating Indiana's top leaders, see what's coming up and reserve your seat at ibj.com/RSVP.
This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the afternoon of Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. I'm Alex Brown. Negotiations between BP and the United Steelworkers Local 7-1 over a new contract for more than 800 union workers at the Whiting Refinery reached a critical point Tuesday. The oil giant said it plans to initiate a lockout of union workers beginning Thursday. Whiting Refinery manager Chris Delafranco.
The union has not meaningfully negotiated about the company contract proposals that are critical to the long-term sustainability of the refinery. In fact, the union has unequivocally rejected company proposals twice now without offering a counter that addresses our concerns.
BP said negotiations will continue during the lockout, but the lockout will only end if the union accepts its most recent offer. Indianapolis International Airport is welcoming a new airline and 2 new business-focused routes. Starting June 18th, Avelo Airlines will start nonstop flights from Indianapolis to New Haven, Connecticut, and to Concord, North Carolina. Airport Executive Director Mario Rodriguez.
They're great destinations for business and even great destinations for pleasure, but mostly we're aiming at opening up more business destinations for this airport.
We'll have more on the latest developments at the airport on this weekend's edition of Inside Indiana Business Television. A new report from BioCrossroads shows Indiana continued its streak of being the nation's top exporter of life sciences and pharmaceutical products in 2025. Additionally, the state's life sciences sector surpassed $100 billion in economic activity for the first time, while employing more than 70,000 people. From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media Podcast Network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.
The town of Culver has hired Retail Strategies, a municipal consulting firm headquartered in Birmingham, Alabama, to develop a revitalization plan for its 2 distinct downtown areas and help bridge the gap between them, in a move town officials said is central to Culver's next chapter of growth. Jen Gregory is president of the Downtown Strategies Division at Retail Strategies, who is overseeing the partnership.
These are beautiful areas. There's beautiful architecture, but it feels sort of as 2 separate downtown areas. So connectivity was a big focus of ours. I think our other differentiating factor when we submitted our RFP response was that we are highly focused on action. And I think that resonated with the town team, that we're not just going to be imagining what downtown Culver could be if they had all the resources in the world, but rather really focusing on existing capacity, existing resources, and building on what they have.
The strategies recommended will fall under 4 categories: policy, design, tourism, and economic vitality. Gregory said downtowns organized around those 4 pillars tend to sustain progress more reliably over time. Eli Lilly and Co is spending as much as $1.8 billion to upgrade its near downtown Indianapolis research and manufacturing operations over the next several years. Edgardo Hernandez, president of manufacturing operations, said the project investments include improvements to existing buildings as well as growth of the Lilly Technology Center campus facility footprint through building expansion and new construction. Lilly declined to be more specific about the scope of that work, including the amount of new square footage being built as part of the investment. The Indiana Donor Network says it is the first organ recovery organization in the country that's using new technology to help save lives. In January, a man's donated lungs were recovered for potential transplant, but were rejected by several regional transplant centers. Indiana Donor Network partnered with Sweden-based Ex Vivo and Wisconsin-based Perfusion Solution to implement an in-house machine perfusion system that keeps donated lungs functional outside the human body. Oregon Service Director Sherry Quire.
Without doing this, we would have had, lungs that would not have been accepted. Lungs being accepted is truly directly saving someone's life.
The Indiana Donor Network also has devices for kidney and liver perfusion. Huntington University President Rob Pepper is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports and entertainment, and beyond. Available now on the IBJ Media app or your favorite podcast provider. I'm Alex Brown for Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand.
Curious about what's shaping law in Indiana? From court reforms and NIL rights to mental health courts and energy commissions, the Indiana Lawyer Podcast breaks down the biggest legal issues of our time. I'm your host, reporter Maura Johnson. Join me every other week for your insider guide to what matters in law and why it impacts you. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app or at ibjpodcasts.com.
Thanks for listening to this IBJ Media podcast. You're probably going to remember this ad. Do you know why? Podcast advertising works. 85% of listeners recalled hearing an ad during a podcast, and 70% of podcast listeners have acted after hearing an ad. So whether you're looking to be heard across the entire IBJ Media podcast network, sponsor one of our shows, or just start with a 30-second ad, IBJ Media can help. Contact advertise at ibj.com to learn more.